A Fox News alert to start us off here, and really no surprise, but FBI Director Christopher Wray has announced that he is going to be ending his tenure as the FBI director.
He quit because he's a wimp, a pencil neck, a loser. He's afraid of us. That's why he quit. And look at Brennan. Look at the fear. Now they get it, that they're going to have no stop at all for the investigations that are surely going to happen on their criminality.
Top MAGA Republicans are publicly celebrating a shocking announcement from the FBI yesterday, which MAGA believes will make it a hell of a lot easier for Donald Trump to prosecute his political opponents, and we have to talk about it. But before we do, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, there's no way to sugarcoat it. This is bad news for those of us who are sane, those of us who criticize Donald Trump, and really democracy as a whole, because it sets a really dangerous, precarious precedent. But we're going to start with the big news, which was announced yesterday, courtesy of Republican Trump-appointed FBI Director Christopher Wray.
A Fox News alert to start us off here, and really no surprise, but FBI Director Christopher Wray has announced that he is going to be ending his tenure as the FBI director earlier than the end of his 10-year term, which, again, is not surprising, as Donald Trump has said he wants Kash Patel to head up the FBI in the new administration. David Spunt, live at the Justice Department with the breaking news for us. David?
Well, John, Christopher Wray, the FBI director, is making this announcement right now in an all-staff town hall with thousands of FBI employees across the country. He says now is his time to go. As you mentioned, he has a 10-year term. All FBI directors do. He was 7 years into his 10-year term, and realistically, he had two options. Wait to be fired by President-elect Donald Trump because Trump announced Kash Patel would take over, or bow out before. He has chosen to bow out before.
Yeah. So, as you know, Donald Trump had publicly announced that he wants Kash Patel, one of the most unhinged and sycophantic and cultish and vengeful members of the MAGA movement, to be the FBI director. The problem was that Christopher Wray, a Republican Trump appointee, was in the middle of a 10-year term. So Trump announced that he was going to fire Christopher Wray, and we'll get into all of that. But now Christopher Wray has done Trump a solid. He's like, hey, Donald, tell you what, you don't have to fire me. I'll announce my intention to resign from this position because I don't want the FBI to get dragged down into a political quagmire. I don't want to politicize the FBI. So if you want me gone, as much as I don't want to go, I'll leave. And we'll get into all of that. But I want you to see MAGA Republicans' reaction to this, particularly Steve Bannon, who is a major visionary behind the MAGA movement, one of Donald Trump's top advisors and top strategists. He's celebrating. And from the perspective of MAGA, why the hell wouldn't they? So listen to some of these unhinged remarks from Steve Bannon, which should chill the blood of any patriotic American because it presages what's to come.
Evening show, and man, what an explosive afternoon. Incredible. The American Gestapo, let's get it right over there. We don't call it the Gestapo. We call it the American Gestapo. Stunningly, Chris Wray resigns. This is what's so great about these people. They're so tough and so puffed up, and you know, they're so going to do this and going to do that. They're running for the hills. Nobody thought Wray would resign. They thought Trump would have to fire him after he got in, and then it'd be a court, it'd be a big fight, the Congress would get involved. He quit. He quit because he's a wimp, a pencil neck, a loser. He's afraid of us. That's why he quit. And look at Brennan. Look at the fear. Now they get it, that they're going to have no stop at all for the investigations that are surely going to happen on their criminality.
So that's Steve Bannon. Again, not just some random podcaster, not some sort of random conservative, but a major influence, a major power in the MAGA movement, celebrating this because he thinks it's going to make it a lot easier for Donald Trump to enact his publicly stated plans of retribution. Will it happen? I don't know, but it certainly puts Trump in a much easier position to go ahead and go through with it. And again, I before we get into a reminder of what Kash Patel has threatened to do, ironically on Steve Bannon's War Room podcast, so we're about to see more Bannon, I do want to explore a bit more about Christopher Wray. Again, a Republican Trump appointee. Ari Melber put this together, and I thought it was really persuasive because, unfortunately, a lot of elected Democrats are celebrating Christopher Wray as a man of integrity, you know, somebody they have a lot of respect for. And I'm sure he was good at his job, but his decision to resign is a capitulation in the face of Trump's authoritarianism. And it actually defies Christopher Wray's previously public statements on the matter of 10-year terms and the position of FBI director and the importance not to bow to political pressure. So Ari Melber is going to take it from here, and then I'll see you on the other side.
First, and this news only makes sense if you remember that Wray himself testified under oath that the 10-year term was the right approach for that independence.
I think the FBI director has a 10-year term because there is a judgment made that the role of the FBI and the role of the FBI director needs to be one that is independent of partisan politics.
Wray saying under oath, you have to be independent. You have to hold strong to the term against those partisan pressures, which were very clearly on display from then President Trump. So keep that in mind, because the news tonight is that Chris Wray has now announced he is quitting early. He will resign, he says, at the end of President Biden's administration. And now I'll show you what he might have hoped you only saw in isolation without the context and the history I just showed you. Mr. Wray offering a new and opposite rationale of what he said under oath. Contradicting what he said, that the 10-year term is what protects independence, he now just sort of blithely says the opposite, that quitting early will avoid his bureau from being dragged further into the partisan fray.
So we don't need to hear, I mean, again, Fox just did the recap of Wray's statement. You have Ari Melber doing it as well. We don't need to hear more from Wray on this front. The important thing is to identify the hypocrisy, the contradiction, the fact that when he was, in his Senate confirmation process after Trump nominated him, because remember, James Comey was the Republican FBI director when Donald Trump became president in 2017. And then Trump fired James Comey because Comey, he felt, was insufficiently loyal to him. You're supposed to only fire the FBI director for cause. The FBI director absolutely works for the president. The president is their boss, but they're not supposed to be an at-will employee. You're supposed to only fire them for things like negligence and gross incompetence. You're not supposed to fire them because, oh my God, they're a Republican. Oh my God, they're a Democrat, right? For cause. And Trump invented a bullshit cause. He's like, you know what, James Comey, I don't like how you handled the Hillary Clinton investigation. Neither did Democrats, for that matter, because James Comey announced just weeks before the election that he had reopened the investigation into Hillary Clinton, and though he didn't find any evidence of criminal wrongdoing, basically wagged his finger and excoriated her in public. Most election experts believe that that had a major influence over the outcome of the election. Again, just days before ballots were cast. That obviously favored Trump. Trump benefited from what Comey did, but then Trump used that as the predicate to fire Comey. That was the cause. It was just transparent bullshit. Then he appointed Christopher Wray, a Republican, that same Christopher Wray. And now he wants to fire Christopher Wray because he felt Christopher Wray was insufficiently loyal to him, much like Comey. The logic is so muddled. And even if you grant the premise, well, Wray should be loyal to Donald Trump. Well, what's to say about Donald Trump that he is so incompetent and such a weak, stupid judge of character that he is now firing the man that he appointed in the first place? Shouldn't Trump get the blame for appointing someone that you think is so loyal and bad at their job, or so disloyal and bad at their job? But again, MAGA logic. Trump is never responsible for any decision he makes if it's bad, and he is responsible for everything in the world which is good. They gerrymander it perfectly because they're not beholden to consistency. I'm going to pause on the Chris Wray thing for just a second, just to remind you again of what his likely successor, Kash Patel, has recently said about using the powers of the federal government, in this case it would be the FBI, against Trump's critics and political opponents.
Excuse me, the one thing we learned in the Trump administration the first go around is we got to put in all America patriots top to bottom. And we got them for law enforcement. We got them for intel collection. We got them for offensive operations. We got them for DOD, CIA, everywhere. And the one thing we will do that they never will do is we will follow the facts and the law and go to courts of law and correct these justices and lawyers who have been prosecuting these cases based on politics and actually issuing them as lawfare. We will go out and find the conspirators, not just in government, but in the media. Yes, we're going to come after the people in the media who lied about American citizens, who helped Joe Biden rig presidential elections. We're going to come after you. Whether it's criminally or civilly, we'll figure that out. But yeah, we're putting you all on notice. And Steve, this is why they hate us. This is why we're tyrannical. This is why we're dictators.
Yes, it is why you're hated. It is why people find you tyrannical and dictatorial. But again, one of the games, we play it in vain. We just play it in vain. There's no point because MAGA doesn't care. But imagine if you had a Democratic nominee for FBI director who said something to the effect of, listen, we're going to go after the media. We're going to go after Fox News. We're going to go after Newsmax. We're going to go after the Daily Wire. We're going to go after Elon Musk's Twitter. We're going to go after people who helped rig the 2016 or 2024 election. It doesn't matter what the predicate is, civilly or criminally, we'll figure it out, but we're coming after you. You're on notice. Imagine that there was a Democrat out there so unhinged as to say something like that. How would MAGA react? Well, they would be furious. They would be rightly furious, rightly concerned, because it would look like a fishing expedition that you're really not interested in whether or not the subject broke the law. You are looking for an excuse to punish them for political reasons. There is no Democratic counterpart to Kash Patel. And Kash Patel was, if Trump wants, Kash Patel was always going to be FBI director because it depended on how much pressure he was going to put on a sycophantic Republican Party. But there was an opportunity to make Trump work for it, at least relatively speaking, by Christopher Wray remaining as FBI director and forcing Trump to fire him and making a public spectacle over it. It would also have the benefit of aligning with what Christopher Wray previously said under oath, that he believed in the full 10-year term of the FBI director as a way to depoliticize the Bureau from Republican or Democratic partisan politics. And now he's capitulating to them. So Wray has been revealed to be a liar and a coward and a betrayer of his own principles, and he's made it that much easier for Trump to do what Trump has wanted to do from the beginning. Also on Christopher Wray, it's important because I got thinking about this. We've talked about the delays, the inexcusable delays in the prosecution of Donald Trump at the federal level. And I want to remind you that Christopher Wray reportedly played a role in that. From the Washington Post article from June of last year in this investigative bombshell exposing the fecklessness of the Department of Justice to go after Donald Trump, I want to read you two excerpts. Whether a decision about Trump's culpability for January 6 could have come any earlier is unclear. The delays in examining the question began before Garland was even confirmed. Sherwin, senior department officials, and Paul Abate, top deputy to FBI Director Christopher Wray, squashed a plan by prosecutors in the U.S. Attorney's Office to directly investigate Trump's associate for any links to the riot, deeming it premature, according to 5 individuals familiar with the decision. The strategy was embraced by Garland, Monaco, and Wray. So Wray's top deputy ultimately squashed investigations into Trump because they felt that it was premature. And then Wray embraced that strategy, the sort of top-down approach. Absolutely infuriating. But then you think, okay, is that all he did? Just cause a minor delay? Well, there's another part in that report which is really frustrating, talking about investigation into the fake electors plot. So, more than a year after the attack on our Capitol, the public's still searching for accountability. If the country does not commit to investigating and pursuing accountability for those responsible, the court feels January 6 will repeat itself. In April 2022, more than 15 months after the attack, Wray finally signed off on the authorization opening a criminal investigation into the fake electors plot. But the fake electors scheme was something that was known about actually before January 6th because Trump was boasting about sending fake electors and gathering electors. So the FBI had a predicate to investigate fake electors since January 6th at least. And Wray dragged his feet. 15 months later, would he only authorize the opening of a criminal investigation? So it wasn't just Merrick Garland. It was also Christopher Wray, dragging his feet in a way which benefited Trump. Now, do I think that he was personally doing it, even though he was a Trump-appointed Republican? Maybe not. Maybe it was just, oh my God, if we go after Trump, we're going to be seen as political. To which I say, what I always say to people who make that argument, people still believe that the Justice Department is politicized. Republicans are not more loyal or do not have deeper faith in the Department of Justice now than they did before Merrick Garland assumed office. Because it's all about outcomes. Going after Trump at all for any reason meant that at least 1/3 of this country was going to write off the DOJ. And then the propaganda arm of the MAGA Republican Party, like Fox News, Newsmax, and others, they did the rest. So Wray and Garland dragging their feet did nobody any favors. It didn't do favors for anybody. And that's where we are. Now, the last thing I want to say is Lawrence O'Donnell making a really good point about the position of FBI director and the 10-year term limit. And I want you to notice a pattern.
After the Nixon criminal scandals that involved the FBI, Congress took action to depoliticize the job of FBI director by giving the FBI director a 10-year term. That meant that some presidents might not ever get to appoint an FBI director, and some didn't. It was inconceivable in the aftermath of the Nixon scandals that a president would fire an FBI director for the offense of investigating that president, which is exactly what Donald Trump did when he fired James Comey as FBI director in 2017, thereby becoming the first president in history to fire an FBI director in the middle of a 10-year term. President Jimmy Carter was the first president to appoint an FBI director to a 10-year term, and of course, he chose a Republican, William Webster. And I say of course, because in those days, the way for a president to prove that a job was above politics was to give that job to someone from the other party. And so no one was surprised by Jimmy Carter's choice of Republican William Webster. But when it came time for Republican presidents to appoint FBI directors, they too chose Republican FBI directors. Bill Clinton was the next Democratic president after Jimmy Carter to appoint an FBI director, and he chose Republican Louis Freeh. Next, George W. Bush chose Robert Mueller, Republican Robert Mueller, to serve a full 10-year term. And then President Obama asked Republican Robert Mueller to extend his service in the FBI beyond the 10 years, which actually required an act of Congress to allow Robert Mueller to serve beyond the 10-year limit. Robert Mueller served 12 years as FBI director, and then President Obama chose to replace him with Republican James Comey to serve as FBI director. And James Comey served 3 years, 247 days before Donald Trump fired him and replaced him with Republican Christopher Wray.
So you see the pattern? I've complained about this before. If you watch Live and Learn, the weekly podcast I do with Hutch and Pisco and Econoboy, this is something I've complained about. I've complained about it in conversations with Destiny, Stephen. And what we see here is Republicans believe that only Republicans can investigate anybody. Republicans will appoint Republicans to investigate Democrats and Republicans. And apparently, Democrats are obligated to appoint Republicans to investigate Republicans or Democrats. This is another asymmetry. Republicans can appoint whoever they want, Republicans. Democrats are obligated, apparently, to only appoint Republicans. We have to be done with this. Should we be so lucky as to get the White House back in 4 years or 8 years or whenever? We're done with Republican FBI directors. We're done with that. Republicans appoint Republicans, so Democrats should get to appoint Democrats. Democrats should appoint Democrats to key positions. That's it. It should be that simple. And if people cry foul, if people clutch their pearls, then the expectation should be, no, then Republicans need to start appointing Democrats. And once we have a few election cycles of Republicans appointing Democrats to key positions like FBI director, then Democrats will consider revisiting that tradition. But we're not going to have a one-sided asymmetrical tradition, even though that's all we've had. That is one thing where Democrats do need to take the gloves off and say that, you know what, unless these things are reciprocated, there's really no point in even entertaining them, and make a commitment moving forward that we will fill these positions with Democratic partisans the way that Republicans do. There's no reason to do anything else. But here's where we are. Kash Patel is now much more likely to become FBI director because people won't have to worry about, oh my God, Christopher Wray will be prematurely fired, and perhaps for corrupt purposes, to whatever extent that was ever going to be a roadblock for elected Republicans. I doubt it was, but now that's gone. Because now Trump can say, I'm not firing anybody. He chose to quit. I am filling a vacancy. And by the way, here's my buddy Kash Patel, who wrote a children's book, Cultishly Devoted to Me, trying to propagandize children about me, and also publicly committing to investigating the media and my critics and inventing the predicate. Civilly, criminally, it doesn't matter. That's where we are. And Christopher Wray has violated his own word, his own publicly stated principles, to help make that happen in an ultimate display of cowardice. And that's why MAGA is celebrating. Food for thought. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.